Hello everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our online workshop, which is organized within the frame of the 6th International Scientific Conference of Economics and Management Researchers, dedicated to the Year of Solidarity for a Green World. It is organized in cooperation with Azerbaijan State University of Economics, Heydar Aliyev Center, Regional Development Public Union, and the UNEC International Center for Graduate Education. Today we're welcoming a very esteemed panel. I'd like to start the introductions with Poonam Balanang. Poonam is a partner at Tech Plus Invest, an ESG impact investment group, which is about to launch. Her career spans continents, focusing on brand and organizational restructuring, digital transformation, risk management, and leading public consultation roles for emerging economies. Joining her today is Rahim Bayramlı. Rahim is the CEO of a major innovations ecosystem builder in the region called Sabah Hub. He's overlooked the creation of numerous acceleration programs, educational initiatives, venture studio, and a venture fund, all aimed at supporting green innovations and sustainable practices. And joining them is one of the leading specialists in startup development and support through acceleration and incubation programs, Orhan Abbasov. Orhan has extensive experience in fostering the growth of startups on a local and regional scale. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining today's panel. As I've mentioned before, I'd like to make sure that this panel is less about presenting in long speeches and more about a discussion. I think considering the fact especially that Orhan, Rahim, and I know each other very well, and Poonam is joining our ecosystem as well, we can afford to have a nice and friendly discussion. I think that's what will be a lot more interesting to our viewers as well. So today I'd like to focus our discussion on three major topics. And the first one is the role of innovation in sustainability. As we know, COP29 is just around the corner, and all we hear from everywhere in the regional ecosystems is sustainability, green tech, climate tech, and so on. But let's understand exactly what those buzzwords mean in terms of transforming them into trends in our local ecosystem. And my first question is to get the kind of local perspective is to Orhan and Rahim, because they're so involved in the ecosystem. What type of innovation in sustainability do you see becoming trends in the near future?
I can maybe start here. So I think when it comes to the local realities of the ecosystem, given as a country our energy history, we have been a major oil and gas producer for the past 100 years. For us, the reality is that I think here we have two advantages. Number one, building ecosystem around energy transition, clean technologies makes sense for us. Firstly, because of the availability of talent. If there is one industry where we have been able to develop major talents, competitive on a global landscape, that would be energy, and transferring that talent and adapting it from traditional energy extraction processes to more sustainable energy sources is much easier, in my opinion, than creating something from scratch. And the other idea, of course, is that when it comes to local realities, it's always easier and better to build products and solutions to problems which exist locally. So for us, if we focus on some environmental issue or on some general problem of a Western economy, of a US economy, oftentimes we might be detached and quite far from the people actually experiencing the problem. That is why we will not have an unfair advantage there. In our reality, when it comes to clean energy, we have existing problems locally here to do with our water shortage, to do with our agriculture, to do with our environment, and building solutions where you know that you can start implementing them locally, and like a local economy, Korea can be like a sandbox before you expand beyond our borders. That is, in our opinion, a more sustainable way to build companies, to start locally, then go regional, and then see if you can tackle global problems as well. Well, I think you're muted, unless it's
Thank you.
only me
That's
who's not hearing.
the most common problem with these conferences. I do apologize. Thank you very much for that answer, Rahim. I think that gives a foundation to the remaining of our discussion, especially if we look at the local perspective. But my follow-up question is going to go to Poonam, and building from your experience with ESG and especially with impact investing. How important is impact investing is a term that we hear quite a lot actually in the local ecosystem nowadays. But in order to help these transitions that Rahim was talking about, how important is impact investing in your opinion, and what can we do as an ecosystem to bring those practices to our local realities?
Thanks for the question, and thanks for having me as well. We're very excited to be a part of the Azerbaijan ecosystem first and foremost, and get more localized knowledge firsthand. So, being from a oil and gas based country as well, like Malaysia, I have a certain amount of personal mission to see more use cases come up commonly all around the world. In fact, and it's a very good question. What we find is important is whether you call it impact or sustainable finance or responsible investing, whichever way you term it. The point is, the measurability and how early we create market solutions, market access, really. So when we start to talk to startups, for example, I would argue it's even relevant at a venture studio stage to take into account ESG common drivers that are happening, because the fact is this year we see penalties roll out to quite a few MNCs as well, and those operating on the EU economy, right? So the earlier we look into all of these things, and not just ESG, but Task Force on Climate Disclosures, for example, the TNFD in the UK, or the Task Force on Climate Disclosures from the SEC in the United States. I mean, they're all relevant thrusts, and these are, at the end of the day, not guardrails, but rather guiding principles of what impact means in that region, right? So we see globally that there isn't really a cohesive way of quantifying ESGs, for example, but there are principles of adverse impact, which 14 of which are lawful, and so each of us can really take a part of one of these thrusts, whether it's chemical management, or whether it's ammonia or hydrogen, or heat energy transition, and we can then define. And so it's very important to enable the startup ecosystem, especially those who are embarking on first of its kind or frontier technologies.
Thank you very much for that question. And to build on that, as we're all part of innovation ecosystems, be it local, regional, we have to deal a lot with regulators of these ecosystems as well. And from everything you mentioned before, both Poonam and Rahim, I think the role of the regulatory bodies is very important. So I want to ask a question to both of you, but in a different perspective. From Rahim, I'd like to understand what, in your opinion, should be the role of the regulators in us focusing more on sustainable and green solutions. And as a follow-up, I'd like Poonam to share her experience with positive and, let's say, less desirable strategies that regulators have used in ecosystems that you've been a part of globally.
I can start here if you want. So from my perspective, first of all, disclosure, I am not somebody who is well-versed in clean energy in particular. That is not my background. But if we just step to let's say, a higher level discussion here, I feel like looking very fundamentally at what is happening and what needs to be done. We all understand that there are some serious climate challenges facing our planet and facing humankind as we look forward. Um, how I like to think about it is that there are usually two schools of thoughts. There are those people who believe that we're already overpopulated, that climate change is already irreversible, and people take a much more negative view of the future. And there is a second school of thought, which fundamentally believes that humanity will be able to solve problems faster than they arise. So the more people we have on Earth, the more problem we have, we will also have more creativity. And fundamentally, human ingenuity will be able to solve those problems which today feel irreversible. Today, we've oftentimes seen in the media different statements, different articles talking about how basically we're moving to a base, everything will be very bad in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the line. But they usually take into account technologies and solutions which are available today, not taking into account what we will be able to produce over the next 20, 30, 50 years. And looking at our history, I think we as a humankind have been able to produce some remarkable solutions to our problems. And there is no reason not to believe that we will not be able to continue that going forward. And when it comes to the question of regulation, fundamentally, I'm a believer that humankind can solve most of the problems which face us today. But the two questions, question of regulation and question of funding, are very important here, because these are the instruments through which we actually unlock that human potential. So for us to actually be able to solve those problems, we need to make sure that the best of us are really working on the most important and most pressing issues. And regulation is one obstacle, which is usually on the way. It's a factor which can uh, prevent the best of us from focusing on the right issues. So that's why the regulator should create the environment um, where the right people, the right minds can focus on the right problems. And going back to the point about funding I feel also plays a signaling role in the economy. So depending on where we decide to direct our funding, by investing in the right problems, in the right problem spaces, we're basically kind of directing the human capital potential to those particular industries. Again, we'll not be commenting on particular regulations. As I mentioned, I am not from this industry, but just wanted to talk a little bit here about what importance I believe both regulation funding play in directing our human capital potential to particular problems.
Thank you very much, Rahim. In terms of the sort of global outlook, Poonam, and from your experience in the international ecosystems, what good do you see coming from regulators?
It's really interesting. We started deep diving actually at the first EU Deep Tech conference in last year that was held when we had a change of guard in our EU representative, and of course EIF and EIB, for example, and EIC therefore now have different sort of drivers, and we're seeing also as I said, a penalty-based system be rolled out in Europe, and that obviously creates a sense of urgency that is there with corporate venture capital, R&D centers, and when we look at for us at Tech Invest, we have this over-encompassing 1 million carbon ton CO2 emission reduction, which we hope we will be able to not only do over the lifetime of the fund, but also do it with our co-investors and our ecosystem partners collectively, like Sabah Hub. I'm very excited to also see the capacity of 20% or so clean technology startups coming out of the Azerbaijan ecosystem. And so I agree with what's said earlier as well, that the role of human capital is where the true conversation of sustainability is. And the one of the good stories is that when we look at gross national incomes or retention strategies, or how we are encouraging new talent, more diverse STEM field talent, more diverse deep tech talent, these are actually part and parcel of our goals with Sabah Hub, and is very much even the line items in our soon to become MOU and partnership agreement that we want to further. So and being a former diaspora strategist for Malaysia as well for talent, upskilling, getting the right people in funds of funds positions is also a very important thing, and it's very much sustainable at a human level. That's the good story. Despite geopolitical tensions, despite all these unfortunate conflicts, this remains our strongest base, upskilling and retention of our own talent. So I would love to see in the future, I've seen good stories about diaspora funding growth companies, for example, diaspora talent being brought back. Armenia is doing a very good job at this. I think they have some of the highest retention of diaspora funding through angel networks and syndications, especially. I see a good take up. Other regions also are trying to capitalize on that. And I think the role of regulators here is very clear and very defined. Ecosystems play a really important part in understanding intrapreneurship, entrepreneurship, how educational entities are also incorporating entrepreneurialism and sustaining founders and sustaining serial founders. So some of these KPIs is the job of not just the public sector, but of course the job of all of us. So we look forward to creating some of those scorecards as well. That's the good part.
Thank you very much. So in terms of the effect, and I'm glad that you brought the conversation here. Of course, it's very important what's being done on the regulatory side, and as you guys mentioned, the flow of money and the flow of human capital needs to be directed towards the sectors that are important to us right now. And I want to ask a question to Orhan, actually, because we see that change in direction of funding and of human capital development, of funding of research and development as well, in our region especially. But I want to ask Orhan, if on a practical level, if on an ecosystem level, do we really see a change, and is there something that we can foresee coming into the near future as well?
Thanks a lot for the question, Farhad. Actually, I think there are a lot of good dynamics happening in the region, in the country as well. The one thing that I would like to announce from here is that we are actively talking to one of the international players in regards of clean tech investment, and we are gonna launch an accelerator program together with Startup Bootcamp in Azerbaijan, designed for the regional startups. And the first batch of 10 teams will be selected during Baku Investment Day. That is gonna happen in June 28 and 27 and 28. Punam will be there as well, and we are all going to be there as well. So with that acceleration, throughout the next 6 years, next 3 years, $6 million will be invested into local ecosystem, and the first $1 million will be invested into clean tech startups. Taking that into consideration, that's a good dynamic happening, not just regards of any investment, but the first batch of investment going to clean tech startups, indication of interest in the field from global players wanting to scale to this region as well. On the other hand, there are a lot of venture funds that want to actively participate in this ecosystem, and I know Tact Plus Invest is also one of those investors who want to explore what is happening in Azerbaijan, and not just Azerbaijan, but on more wider region. That is like CIS or SPEC countries like Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Georgia, Turkey, and etc. So in that regard as well, Azerbaijan is kind of in the middle of this whole conversation, and geographically, our position is somewhat of a connector. Like we can play a role of a bridge for this whole region. On the other hand, startups, I see more and more clean tech startups emerging in the market. We have big interest from startups applying for Baku ID, and I would say competition for clean tech startup is huge. I mean, there are a lot of startups doing innovative technologies, and that will be presented during Baku ID. There are ones that are tackling the future problems that might encompass in the clean tech space. That's what Rahim was telling, that the problem is not just today, it's more like 10 years from now, 20 years from now. And in that sense, the region is getting more and more active in generating startups that are solving clean tech problem. Because Up until this moment, we usually had a lot of B2B solutions targeting fintech or edtech problems, but it was never clean tech up until, I would say, last couple of years.
Thank you very much, Orhan. And it seems like we are moving in the right direction as ecosystem participants, as regulators, and as corporate players as well. But my question is, and this is a question to all of you, because you all have different perspectives. How can we maintain this path? How can we make sure that we keep moving in the right direction in terms of sustainability in innovation, moving further than just the next COP or the next acceleration program or something like that? What can we do on a practical level, on an ecosystem level, to make sure that this trend continues?
Now, may I go first?
Yes, go ahead, please. Let's start.
Okay. I took the female advantage there, ladies first. No, but I'm very excited to answer this question because, I think the world of frontier investing, let's say, right? We are all future investors here. And whether we are investing sweat equity, we are investing technical know-how, we are investing resources that are already ready to us, or we are off-balance sheet investors, or we are managing other people's funds. It doesn't really matter what we are doing, actually, how we are doing it. The point is we are betting on the future, right? And I see a lot of ecosystems, not focus on the tangibility of today, focus a lot on, the doom and gloom of the conversation. I mean, on our side in Tech Invest, we are very niched in our thesis in green manufacturing and green production and energy transitions in these scaled areas. So we are looking for, obviously, metrics like, better Series B companies, more clean tech scaled companies, not just using words like, gigacorn and unicorn and things like that, because moving away from this traditional, pure profit mindset and this spray and pray mindset is super important because it portfolio dynamics, in my opinion, also whether you are syndicating 80 funds, 80 companies, or you're doing proof of concepts for 60 companies. The thing is, the collective resource that you govern, and can govern or can employ, you should match, a very tangible outcome that you're looking for. And so I keep telling everyone that the space of clean tech and climate tech is deep tech as well is so big, that we can all really pick a particular part of the portfolio that we want to further, right? So for us, it's late seed, early growth, higher technology readiness levels. So we are excited to, I don't want to say numbers here because I don't want to discount anybody. I don't want to discourage anybody. Instead, we are sending some of our clean tech startups that are sourced all over the world, just to give variance and just to show, some comparatives into this competition as well with Startup Bootcamp and with Sabahab, just to show, okay, these are some other contrasting ways of, clean tech that is being done in community-driven models, for example, where, they have social metrics which are more not-for-profit driven, or inversely, completely B2B industrial manufacturing. And some of the ways we have basically primed them, okay, how are they contributing to that CO2 reduction mission, right? On the scale side for industrial innovation, for infrastructure and industrial impact, we only have such a short time. We only have 7 years, right? So, and we are actually very much behind the global attrition for true scale change in clean technology, or a better air quality, better water quality, waste management, even green ammonia. We're actually very behind. I think as a global investor pond have maybe only 2 trillion in total funding, but the needed funding is actually about 7 trillion today. So the shortfall is massive. So I think the biggest thing that ecosystems can do is, not follow too many micro trends, too many sexy trends, rather follow what is tangible in the resources and keep sort of co-KPIing between public finance and private finance, as well as meeting minds with our biggest technology players in the markets. If we are oil and gas, we are oil and gas. If we are mining, then we are mining. If we are built environment, we are that. And removing a lot of these biases, I think, is the most important thing. So
just to build on this, so how I think, like, I really agree with the idea of, like, we need to be quite practical here. We can all talk here about the fancy trends, about some big opportunities. They might seem nice when you give a speech. They might seem nice during some events, but really you need to understand practically what can you do to achieve results. And again, I think in many things that we're doing, there's a long way of achieving results, which might be sustainable, but it takes ages. You start from your schools, you start educating people. Like, even as part of the COP, I think there were discussions about Ministry of Education of incorporating some green education components to our school curriculum, right? These are all things which will have impact, but there are also these things will take ages. And oftentimes you don't have ages. And for me, I think the two important concepts, if you really want to drive change, is number one, momentum, and number two is leverage. So when it comes to momentum, you need to be able to start somewhere and to build up the speed. And for us in Azerbaijan, I think COP gives a very good opportunity. Because of COP, we always talk about this, like with Orhan, with Farhat. So what we're seeing in Azerbaijan is that anything to do with COP, any project which would usually take 3 years, you can get it done in 6 months. Because the entire country is focused on delivering and performing and showcasing something before COP. So using this opportunity to start important and impactful projects and build up momentum, and then you need to leverage what is your unfair advantage. And unfortunately, our general population, on a countrywide level, is climate change a very big issue for us today? Probably not. Even if we start working on this today with our schools, that will take ages. But we already have companies where a lot of our talent is focused. A talent which understands energy, which understands energy transition, and understands the climate impact of that. We have huge companies like BP being present in this region. SOCAR is our state-owned company with a $50 billion revenue with 50,000 employees. Some of the best engineers in this region work there. So activating those corporates, activating their talent, activating their brand names on a global level, their connections on a global level, I feel like these are the initial building blocks which should be used to build a sustainable innovation ecosystem around clean tech in Azerbaijan.
Thank you very much, Rahim and Punam. And I would like to hear from Orhan about this as well a little bit, but from more of a, let's say, ecosystem operator perspective. We've talked about
Farhad, I think you're again muted.
every time. I'm sorry. So I wanted to hear from Orhan as well, as I was saying, about more of a perspective of a ecosystem operator, because we've heard how from Punam and from Rahim how ecosystem stakeholders have a important effect on keeping this momentum going. But from let's say, as I said, operators and people working on supporting these startups, what can we do to keep this trend going, and in particular, what is Sabah Hub planning to do in that regard as well?
Thank you for the question, Farhad. So, first of all, I think the one thing that we are doing is the cohort that we already announced. Before that, we already started our incubation, and starting from September, each year we'll have at least one cohort dedicated to clean energy transition, clean techs. So that's one thing that we will keep, hopefully, the momentum going. The other thing, and this might sound a very similar to what Rahim said, but I think the problem is that we don't have problem in regards of corporates, right? Big corporates, being in those big corporates, you don't feel the urge to do some innovation, specifically green innovation, to fight against the climate change, right? As this is the topic of our panel. And then if so we need to activate individuals in those big corporations, so those people see as an option, instead of commercializing their product within the corporates, there is a path of this incubation or acceleration center in Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan, Germany, or wherever that I can join, that will support me and that will make it happen. So in that regard, we need to have more players as Sabah in Azerbaijan that are accelerating or incubating the startups with verticalized focus in clean tech. And we need to have more investors that has in mandate invest into clean tech. If we can get those two things right, I think the talent is there. Like if we need just to attract them into this infrastructure and then move them towards the fundable milestones. And as Punam said, we should be chasing the focus areas. Like clean tech is huge. Is it energy transition, as we are historically very connected to energy transition stuff, the oil industry, and etc. I think there might be an answer to that, and I'll speak to Punam after Baku ID and see her opinion. Maybe her opinion will change, or it will be more clear what we need to focus as Sabah and as Azerbaijan in regards of green innovation.
Thank you very much. So, what I hear the common theme between these perspectives is that there's a need for change, and change is always difficult, especially on a very big scale. In particular, Orhan and Rahim mentioned that in the local ecosystem, we do see resistance to this change. There's not enough urgency in some places. There's not enough care maybe in some other places. So I wanted to ask a question to Punam, and maybe the guys can build on that. You have a lot of experience in helping companies undergo digital transformations, and especially with a focus on ESG integrations. What do you recommend? Let's say you're sitting in front of a group of CEOs of the biggest oil energy companies in Azerbaijan. What are, let's say, the top 3 recommendations that you can give them in order to help facilitate this change?
Well, this is a very good one, and I wouldn't say I have had a lot, but I have had experience in moving the needle at a more national level for public funding, and also on a private level with conglomerates and aggregating industries essentially. And especially industry aggregators play a really big role. So I think one of the top drivers is really. And if you're looking from the point of view of scale change, true scale change, macro level, who are the aggregators of industry verticals, who truly are? And sometimes you'd be surprised to see that, it might not be your top 4 consulting firms. It might not be the typical suspects. It actually could be even an ecosystem. It could even be, for example, in Sweden, Sustain Tech, they have had 12 years of developing the clean tech ecosystem knowledge. And I think they've done a pretty good job and evolved every 5-year period. There's been huge evolutions there. So dedication and patience is sort of a must. The first thing I think is find the aggregators for the industry verticals, so you have those yardsticks. The second thing is that when companies are looking internally, binding the transformation strategy is really important. When I lead transformation strategy for companies, the fact is all BSUs have to unite on a common performance table. Ego has to be set aside. Often I have a saying when I try to unite very diverse minds is, we're all saying the same thing actually, because that's why we're at the table, but we're just saying it in a different way. And of course, I've heard this from my leaders and my mentors many times as well, both private, public, and trisectoral. And that's really important to understand, that performance management is something that we can use, like ESGs, like the principles of adverse impact. They form a guiding compass of mutual gain, right? So if I were to improve this part, you can improve that part. And adding things like continuous improvement. In my time in banking, I was an achiever during the financial crisis for 3 continuous improvement submissions that I did for checking currency in CIBC. And, it might seem At that time, I remember when I was doing it, I was in my early 20s as an immigrant in Canada. So I really had some big points to prove there. I didn't want to be one of those that were let go during the financial crisis. And I wanted to ensure that, this was something that I could stand behind, right? And it must be cascadable, it must be concrete, it must be clear and cascadable and tangible and measurable, right? I mean, this is the main things that you look for. And looking at organizations at a tiership level is also really important, because whether we like it or not, we are now welcoming a new wave of talent in AI. If you look at LLM models, you look at how generative AI is part of LLM, the real expectations in green manufacturing, brownfield manufacturing changing to green manufacturing. I mean, the true tangible use cases in AI, for example, some are very exaggerated, some are quite misled. And of course, every corporate, has a brand value and a brand identity to protect. And so it's really important for transparency and clarity of mission to be there. And it's, in my point of view, that leads me to the third thing, which is investor relations and public relations and brand representation and clarity is something that I wish more corporates were more open about. But being part of the corporate sector previously as well, and then bringing that perspective to the public sector and still consulting, always doing this trisectoral field, it's everyone is afraid to say something incorrect, to do something incorrect, and it's not in the interest to perhaps delay progression, but it is in the interest to be careful, and more industry specific conversations then need to be had. Whenever I see that there is hesitation, then we need to put the top three in a room of an industry and discuss, okay, what energy advantages can we attain together? What can we, maybe even lobby together? And then look at the second tier of a particular industry and see what we can do together. So how does this impact, the audience here, startups, right? I mean, when you're creating a solution that is B2B SaaS, especially, for example, you have the ability to be one of these guiding compasses for performance management, continuous improvement, industry benchmarking. Then these are things that must be there in the USP, especially because we are going against, we're already delayed. We only have 7 years for industrial scale change, and we have financial flows that still need to be redirected a little bit. So this is something to keep in mind at a macro level. And I'm really excited to see countries like Azerbaijan, a lot of the growth economies, even countries like Malaysia, Southeast Asia, all of Central Eurasia, Uzbekistan. In fact, I think Malaysian trade is in Uzbekistan right now. And so everyone is a lot faster in understanding the need for speed. So yeah.
That's very fair, and I think one of the main ones that we as Sabah Hub are trying to focus on is the part where we try to bring people together to one table to have these discussions, because collaboration is very important in bringing this change, in fighting that resistance as well. And my follow-up question is actually to Rahim and Orhan. In terms of sort of the collaboration and the regional integration that we see our ecosystem moving towards, how important do you think that is in, again, fighting that resistance to change and being able to bring forward a positive impact as fast as possible? Why don't we start with Rahim?
Yes, if I start here, I think like in general, when we talk about Sabah Hub strategy going forward, not only to do with green innovation, but with innovation in general, we believe it's of utmost importance for us to be a part of a bigger and wider region. We do not want to see our local ecosystem as comprising only of Azerbaijan. So when we talk about local ecosystem, we're trying to make sure that over the next couple of years, that actually becomes the combined ecosystem of multiple countries in this region. It can be our region, South Caucasus. It can be Central Asian region. We believe that this stage should be working very closely, because together the market size becomes much bigger, and anything that we are trying to test, the initial sandbox before we go global, becomes much larger. And companies which are surviving and thriving coming out of the sandbox will be much more viable to compete in a wider regional level, or even on a global scale. And I think the other thing important here is that, like currently in the at this pre-COP months, what we're trying to achieve is that to activate the Turkic states of this region, to do multiple things: to open a fund of funds, to invest in innovation, having a big clean tech focus there, and also building councils next to some of the leading regional entities like OTS, Organization for Turkic States, SPECA Council as part of UN, so that there are many more platforms where green innovations is being discussed. And why it's important is because, again, coming back to the central player of this ecosystem, the human talent, right? I feel oftentimes the problems that we have is that the urgency is not being felt on the grassroots levels. And I imagine that if you just stop 100 people passing through the boulevard here, for example, right? Most of them will tell you, if you ask them, do you care about climate change? Do you think it's a big problem? They will say, yes, we know about climate change, we care about that, right? But the reality is that when they wake up in the morning, when they go to bed, their daily issues, their daily goals probably have nothing to do with that. They're going after their next promotion, something to do with their private life, something to do with their personal prosperity, which they do not feel is anyhow connected to the big environmental challenges facing the planet. So I think the role of government is somehow to align the, I would say, even KPI structure. So what governments care about, what corporations care about, and what people care about should coincide much more than they currently do. And that is probably the role of the governments, to engage with each other and to create the right regulatory environment and to set the right tone, so we can cascade down those KPIs, so that people understand that what is in their best interest is also in the planet's best interest. That's a very difficult thing to get right, but the only way to do it is, in my opinion, oftentimes top down. So starting from governments, then goes to corporates, and then the individuals in the economy can also feel, understand, realize that, and act accordingly.
Thank you very much, Rahim. And you've touched something that I want to come back to in just a second. But before we do, I want to ask Orhan a question, and your perspective again on a more operational level. In terms of, you've mentioned that Sabah Hub is working with SBC and some other ecosystem players to bring those sustainable innovation trends to our local ecosystem. How much value do you see in these now and going forward, and how much is that collaboration important to direct our ecosystem in the right into the right place?
Well, first of all, thank you for the question. But Baku ID is going to be very huge for us in regards, like, this is kind of like the event before COP29 that sets up the scenery for COP29. The players like Startup Bootcamp and Tact Invest and etc. They are crucial because global names bring those individuals in corporates to Sabah and to this innovation path. I mean, as previously I mentioned, individuals who are working on still oil company or BP or etc. They need to see that there's a path towards it, and the best way to do it is when you go to them and say, hey, there is a global player who knows what they're doing, and then they will be in your cap table. They will teach you what to do, how to do it, and they'll share their guidelines with you so that you fail less. Like, you don't succeed more, but you fail less at least. So in that regard, these global players are crucial that they're invited to this local ecosystem. From other hand, like if you put yourself into their shoes, the reason that they are here is because they see value in this region. Like this region, and in particular Azerbaijan, has this connectivityness and the fact that we all speak the same language. We do understand both the neighbors to the east and to the west, and so that fact kind of makes us stand out in this like in this cluster of countries. So that's why those big names, they want to be present in Azerbaijan in particular. And also historically, as our market is small, Azerbaijan startups, they are forced to scale quicker, because after 1 year or 2 years in this market, you will need to scale as soon as possible. So that's why the historical positioning, the even our challenges are pushing us towards the better outcomes.
Thank you very much for that answer as well, Orhan. So we are slowly starting to run out of time, but the last sort of major topic that I wanted to touch on is we've talked about how to bring this change, how to maintain this momentum and use the leverage that it brings. But change isn't as effective if we don't know how to measure it properly. My question goes specifically to Poonam here, because I believe you are the one with the most experience here. What are the sort of key indicators and patterns that we need to look at in order to assess the effectiveness of the strategies we put forward?
I think, just in the context of, maybe we stick to Azerbaijan and oil and gas, in Azerbaijan, for example, obviously production of hydrogen is super interesting at the moment, right? We were just in Munich here for the automotive conference with Reuters as well. And, it was very interesting, for example, listening to the automotive sector at large, the OEMs of not only Germany, but also, Toyota, Nissan, Hyundai, everybody else as well, globally, how the OEMs are opening up to some of these conversations. Hydrogen or green ammonia, where do we go and what's the truth behind all of this, The fact is, I think, we always need in every effort our champions to take leap, right? And so, we have Caspian Oil and Gas, in Azerbaijan, looking into CCUS and some of these applications, and somebody needs to take the lead, and I think failing is not a conversation that should be there at all. Of course, in terms of R&D costs, we need to encourage more openness as the external ecosystems, watching the market giants move the needle in participation. But the fact is, I see industry to industry, there is a different tonality, a different language, a different almost culture, from automotive to ONG to mining to agro. And so our job around these giants, which move the needle for markets and tariffs and our stock exchanges and our pre-IPO terms even, is to basically keep on making it palatable kind of level. I'm a big fan of scorecards, so I'm excited to sit with the team at Baku ID and do more scorecarding and bring some of this public-private component in. And I mean, an example I see is a lot of countries, we have good roadmaps, we have nice roadmaps, and it's very nice to see that. But when I look at the liveness of the roadmap being updated, for example, a very basic thing for public information, it's not really an activity that a lot of countries want to really take on. And while the public entity might not feel responsible to update on a monthly basis, rather annual basis or semi-annual or pressure basis, the private sector then is also put under a similar kind of momentum, But when you look at conversations like course creation, which we will do with Baku ID, and we're also designing a launchpad program that Sabah Hub is going to be a critical partner of as well, to shape the oil, especially oil and gas conversation, and hydrogen conversation, and energy transition, and CCUS and everything else. We have to focus, on this area, and we don't want. We're not of the ethos to say we are great at everything, because that's not possible. And it just being more detailed and more targeted, and having more live updates, meaning even monthly on our roadmaps. We are not governments, but we could definitely try to set an example there and say, okay, here's our roadmap. Here, private sector giants, regulators, please feel free to point out errors and updates, and and we have to then take that and roll it down towards some of our resource alignments, like upskilling, like scaling of companies, things like that. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to hear from the guys as well in regards to it's a thing that I have been thinking about quite a lot as well, and I'm sure that Rahim and Orhan have, because it's something that's very relevant to us right now. And it does go back to measuring the impact and the success, but in particular with the startups that we accept into these green cohorts, or that we help pivot towards a more sustainable business model. What are we looking for in those startups? And maybe Poonam can help here as well. What is the cutoff? Because we see a lot of startups come say they're working on some digital solutions, and they say that, oh, we're getting rid of printed paper, and that's why we should be considered like a climate tech startup. But is that a fair assumption, or should we be deep diving more and looking for certain metrics within their business models, within their strategies, for them to be considered a clean tech or a green tech startup?
I think so. Basically, when it comes to clean tech startups, because clean tech is such a broad industry, it's such a broad vertical, I would say close to half of the startups can somehow justify being part of this clean tech ecosystem. And it's easy to basically come and claim that you're a clean tech, come and claim that you really have a benefiting somehow when it comes to this push in the fight against climate change. In my opinion, what should be done here is that there are two ways. There are two ways you can be looking for startups. One way is that you're just looking for the next big thing, and you are expecting that some people will come to your door with the right solutions, right? And that's oftentimes what people, I would say, in the Valley probably do in the US, because when you're already stationed at the place which has the highest density of talent and highest density of innovation possible, it's easy to assume that the next big thing will come out of here, and you're just waiting for someone to come with some new solution and sweep you off your feet. In our geography, I would say that our strategy should be much more tailored and much more orchestrated. So we need to define where the value lies. We need to define what we believe in. Do we believe in water management solutions? Do we believe in software companies? Do we believe in going paperless? So where do we believe the solution to our problem lies? And once we understand those spaces, and once you define that we need companies which solve this problem, and this problem, then you basically go to the ecosystem and you start scouting for those particular companies. And companies also seeing that is where the investment is going, that is where the interest is, they will also adjust to solve those problems. So in my opinion, we should be much more deliberate in what we're looking for compared to more advanced ecosystems, be it in Silicon Valley or Israel or in the UK.
Thank you, Rahim. Do you have anything to add to that, Orhan?
No, I think it's well said that we need to orchestrate it very well. We need to understand where is the need and demand, and then this is the thing that we did with Sabah incubation as well, right? Instead of going and opening doors for everyone. We said, let's put up a challenge in our hackathon and see who is solving that challenge, instead of just getting everyone in who is claiming that they are doing clean tech or they are solving a climate issue. So that's why I think the key here is being more precise with what we do want to achieve in the end, and what is the focus of our activities, basically.
Thank you very much for your answers, dear colleagues. So, in the last hour, we've gone through the role of innovation and sustainability, the role of the different stakeholders, the trends that we see now and that we want to see in the future, how to overcome the barriers to this change and how to fight the resistance. And of course, we've touched on how to measure the success. But one of the main points I think that I got from this conversation is that first, we need to collaborate as much as possible and share best practices. We need to have more discussions, but most importantly, we need to start action now. So, especially in places where that action hasn't been started. And I really hope that these conversations have provoked these thoughts in our listeners. And I hope that going forward, we can work together on bringing positive impact. My name is Farhat Pashayev. Thank you very much for tuning in and joining our panel. I really hope you enjoyed our discussion. If our dear panelists have closing remarks, please, I'll give you the floor now. Otherwise, thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure hosting you.
I just would like to thank everyone for being part of it. Farhat, thank you for hosting this, moderating this. Poonam, was great to meet you. Hopefully, we'll see you soon.
Yes,
Orhan, it's a great pleasure to chat.
And from us in Germany, I'm in Munich today. Just very much excited to bring as much as possible to the table, and please encourage us and push us forward as well. We're not in any way authorities on anything also, but I'm very excited to partner on our launchpad and see more scaled partnerships come in, more corporates come in, more green manufacturing come in. And I think Sabah Hub, you've done such a wonderful job already building your own track record and building your own continuous feedback loops. So we are very lucky to be able to participate.
Thank you. We feel likewise.
Thank you, guys. Poonam, was happy to see you again.
Yeah,
Likewise.
and I hope it was the first of many thought-provoking conversations we have in the future.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.